The Storm Team 10 Winter Weather Webcast is sponsored by Dorset Automotive and Rogers Fire and Water Restoration.
After our first measurable snowfall,
I'm just wondering when this winter weather is going to quit. I'm already tired of it.
we're still a month away from winter, but it feels and looks like it is here. And you have questions and concerns.
How much snow are we going to get?
Snow-wise, worse than last year or about the same, and what's the temperature going to be? Because I hear it's going to be a blizzard.
Why has it started snowing so early, and is it going to continue?
Wondering if it's going to snow a lot this year.
This winter's going to be like as hard as last winter, because last winter was pretty rough.
How deep is it going to get?
Is it going to be cold?
These are all fair winter concerns. Questions that have been snowing in our minds since the temperatures have fallen and we ice skate closer and closer to those cold-filled snow shoveling months. In fact, the snow has already made an appearance in our first weather winter advisory for the upcoming winter season has passed, and many of us collected over 1.5 inches of snow. This is where we stand right now. You can feel it, stuck in a pool of cold Canadian air with below average temperatures plaguing the month. There isn't much to run to as the next few days play out. Temperatures remain cold and, well, just cold. So now the questions remain.
Is the weather going to be as bad as it was last year?
Oh, I have a two-wheel drive pickup truck. Are we going to get a lot of snow?
Are we going to have a white Christmas?
But here's one statement I can't argue. This is the best time of the year to
make snowmen and have snowball fights.
In Terre Haute with photojournalist David Essex, I'm Joseph Dames, Storm Team 10.
Well, as you just heard, we have many winter weather questions to get to. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us on WTHI-TV.com for our winter weather webcast. I'm meteorologist Lindsay Monroe alongside Joseph Dames, Kevin Orper, and Matt Gregory will also be joining us to answer all of your questions regarding this upcoming winter season.
Yeah, that's right. We've been collecting your questions the past several days, and you can still ask a question either right here on WTHI-TV.com or through social media using our WTHI Facebook page.
You'll also be hearing from the National Weather Service coming up, and we kind of picked their brains when we were over there a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And they're going to let you know what they think this winter will do. But for now, let's dive into our first question with meteorologist Kevin Orper and Matt Gregory.
All righty, thank you very much, Lindsay. Matt is here with me. We have several questions, and you can still submit your questions to WTHI-TV.com. And as we get questions, we'll continue to answer them. But Matt, you do have some questions.
We've got
here.
some right here. The first one, I think you can handle this one, Kevin, the best. Why is there such a lack of sunshine in Indiana during the winter? Many other states are cold and snowy, but not quite so glum because they still get the sun. And this is from Jennifer Smith, who also, Jennifer put in parentheses, can we fix this with the 2 smiley faces?
Jennifer, no, I don't think we can fix this. What I believe, there are a couple of factors that go into this. First of all, we have shorter daylight hours. And so it feels, psychologically, we have this gloominess because a lot of times it's dark when you go to work in the morning or school, and then a lot of times it's dark when you get off work. And so that's part of it. The sun is low on the horizon. Now, we also have occasionally some cloud cover. It's not so much that we have a lack of sunshine. As far as geographically, Indiana and Illinois are not devoid of sunshine during the winter months. The thing about it is, it may seem as if we are, primarily because, for example, today, Matt, we have a cloud cover, and we've had cloud cover over the past few days, and sunshine has been somewhat absent. But as far as a gloominess and a lack of sunshine, it's not a geographical thing, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with Indiana and Illinois. a lot of times it has more to do with a perception. And maybe the bottom line of that is the fact that we have shorter daylight hours. And so that would be my answer to Jennifer. And she also says, can we fix this? The answer is no. We cannot fix this. The only way we can fix this is as we travel around the sun and the tilt of the earth now starts to, get a little closer, tilted a little more toward the sun. We're going to continue to be gloomy, and that's not going to happen. We're not going to start lengthening our daylight until the latter part of December.
Well, and along that, and this is another question that's for you. This was one that's from Carolyn Williams. And I think Lindsay and you will cover this tonight. Actually, folks, tune in for, you'll cover it tomorrow night, of course. Lindsay will cover it tonight. It's part of the winter weather forecast outlook. Will we have a major ice storm this season?
Well, I have a couple of feelings about this. In my winter forecast, and I don't want to give too much away, but I do have an indication of an ice storm. And I also believe that Friday night in the forecast, we could have some freezing rain. Now, I think it was 3 years ago, we had an ice storm that put a half an inch to a quarter inch of ice on power lines and things like that. And it just caused a real mess. And ice actually on lines can be quite heavy. And so it causes them to buckle, and it causes power outages and so on. As far as a major ice storm, I don't see that happening. But I do believe we may have an ice event, at least one ice event this year, and maybe a more minor ice event, maybe even Friday night. So we'll continue to monitor that for you. So Carolyn, I hope that answers your question. It's likely that we will have an ice storm. A lot of times if we get an ice storm, a lot of times it'll happen in February, actually. So there you go.
This is the next question is from Bill Laney, and I think I'll handle this one if I can. Bill,
okay, go ahead.
Bill, you want to know what causes snow rollers. We were talking about this earlier. We should have a graphic to show you on snow rollers. Snow rollers occur when you have a relatively
look at that.
Look at you can see it right there. It looks almost like someone has been rolling a snowball or rolling up the carpet.
Yeah.
When the ice and the snow, actually the snow is a little bit warmer and therefore a little bit more wet, but it's still a very frozen ground, and you have a very breezy but not too windy wind coming across the plains here. You can see this happen. I actually have not seen these phenomenons until I moved out here. And I think like a lot of it has to do with the amount of wind that you're going to get across those fields. So when the hard-packed snow has a very frozen ground, that's when you see a wetter snow rolling up and sort of almost like looks like a rug at times. So I hope that helps. I know Kevin was saying he's already seen some this year. And he's already had a couple folks send in pictures and what have you. As far as the snow rollers, as you can see, they're very interesting. Now, I think we're going to take a look here, Kevin, at, we talked with meteorologist Mike Ryan.
Right.
You and Lindsay, of course, went to the Weather Service
in
Indianapolis.
We did.
And you got this take on where we are and what they're looking at coming up for the winter season.
All right, this is what the National Weather Service has to say about winter.
A lot of it has to do with what we think El Nino is going to do. And for many months, a lot of the long-range climate prognosticators thought we were going to slide into a pretty good El Nino. And we've seen difficulties in that developing. While we think there is still going to be a El Nino develop, it's probably going to be fairly weak. In some of our studies here locally in central Indiana, during weak El Ninos, we tend to be colder and snowier. And considering some of the other aspects, we've got cooler water temperatures on the Great Lakes. That may have some impact. I think the signs are pointing more towards potential for colder and snowier winter. Mind you, not forecasting again what happened last year. I think the probabilities of an extremely cold, snowy winter are pretty low, but I think we're going to be above normal.
Good information from him, and
Right.
we have more questions that we want to get into, so let's just kind of dive right into that.
All right.
This one is from Jessica Schmidt. I was out and talking to them. We saw her in that story at the beginning of the show, and she wants to know why it has started snowing so early, and is it going to continue? And as we both know, there's a lot of ingredients that have gone into this. The colder air coming out of Canada, we have that deep digging trough, and that's helped bring in some moisture and some precipitation. Cold enough air, I think, is the basic term. We had cold enough air for that snowfall.
Right, and this is something that we don't typically see this early in the season. Now, we normally don't see our first snowfall of the year until December 9th or so. So coming in the 13th, 14th of the month of November is typically a little bit earlier than what we would expect. But whenever you get that jet stream to dip far enough south, you get that cold air to intrude throughout the good portion of the upper Great Plains, a good portion of the Midwest. That's going to change all the precipitation over into the frozen form. So again, it's definitely early for the first snowfall of the season. But as far as those temperatures you were talking about, we actually hit 9 degrees yesterday morning. That was the morning of November
18th.
Right. Getting my days messed up. The 18th, the morning, 9 degrees was that low temperature. We broke a low temperature record here in Terre Haute. It was standing at 15. We got down to 9, and that was the coldest air that we've seen this early in the season since 1997. So all kinds of below average temperatures have been around so far this month. So it is a little bit unseasonal.
So you're right, Jessica. It has started snowing early, but really the main cause is we've just had this cold air that's moved in. Usually we'd see rain for this time of the year, but with the cold air, that's helped change that over to snowfall. As far as is it going to continue? Well, you guys will have your forecast here. Today you'll have yours, and Kevin will have his winter weather forecast tomorrow, right?
Right. And the good news is, even in our 7-day forecast, at this point, we have some temperatures that are going to rebound back into the upper 40s and 50s this coming weekend. So that's actually going to thaw things out a bit for us.
Which will be nice.
Which should be a good thing.
I don't know if we were ready for that snow quite yet.
I know I certainly wasn't, but I did have the scraper ready, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
As long as you have that, you're good to go.
That's right.
All right, now Joseph, you often show us what the Climate Prediction Center says, and we actually have a graphic behind us of something that you have made for the month of November. The Climate Prediction Center puts out these forecasts, whether they be 6 to 10 day outlooks, and they even do up to a 3-month outlook. But this year, the CPC called for below average precipitation.
Yeah, that's right, and you can see this right on the graphic right there in the precipitation outlook for November. But you might be asking, well, we had a good amount of snow already, and we've seen some precipitation, so what's the deal? Well, we can see this as below or equal or above, but that doesn't exactly mean that's what we're going to see. So below average precipitation doesn't always mean less snow. So we're going to look once again at Mike Ryan from the National Weather Service, who will explain that a little bit more.
CPC's forecast of greater chance of drier than normal conditions. Drier than normal doesn't necessarily mean less snow. And the point I like to make is in Indianapolis last year in January, we had almost 27 inches of snow here and below normal precipitation.
Well, it's hard to believe that we actually received below average precipitation last January, because we all remember how much snow we saw. It was actually double what we would normally see for the entire season.
That's right. We had in that January, I was right behind that system because I came here to Terre Haute right after it. I missed out, but look at these totals that we saw through the winter last year, and the total reached up to just over 41 inches of snowfall. January was that number of 22 inches, which is closer towards our average snowfall totals for the winter season. So last year, we all felt it, we all saw it, we all had to commute through that snowfall, a good amount, all the way through the whole winter season.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think that we actually received more snow last January than what we would receive an entire winter season, and it was still below average precipitation. It just goes to show you the difference that temperatures can make in the winter months, and that's something that we always talk about when we're forecasting these winter weather events. 1 degree from 32 to 33 could mean the difference of a freezing rain event. It could mean the difference of snow versus sleet. It could mean a variety of things. So again, that's the temperatures kind of playing a role in the precipitation there.
And maybe we should talk about the precipitation formation. We do have a graphic for that because it can be confusing. We get a lot of questions. What's the difference between freezing rain? What's the difference between sleet and snow? Well, this is broken down from the National Weather Service, and it can be confusing, but you'll notice that it all depends on that layer of warm air and cold air that we see aloft. It usually all starts off as snow, but if it goes through that warm air, it will fall to the surface as rain. But if the surface is cooler, that rain will turn into freezing rain. Now you can see that in the graphic right there. Do you want to talk about the sleet and the snow real fast?
Sure. Sleet is really confusing, and it's sleet versus freezing rain is a question that we get often. Why does it fall as little ice balls versus frozen liquid water droplets? And it all has to do with the layer in the atmosphere, the warm layer in the atmosphere. What kind of temperatures are these precipitation droplets falling through? Again, sleet is going to be a little bit colder, a little higher up, so it has a chance to refreeze before it actually hits the surface. And of course, your plain old snow, it's below 32 degrees all the way up through the atmosphere, so it just stays frozen the entire time. Again, that's a good question, especially when we have to talk about the difference in an ice storm versus something that perhaps could happen this coming Saturday when we have temperatures below freezing in the morning. Freezing rain is expected, and then changing over into an all-rain event as that warm layer becomes a little bit deeper later in the day. So that's always a good thing to cover, and of course we'll revisit that graphic, I'm sure, as we have these events unfolding throughout the season.
That's right. Do you want to take this question right here from Jay Williams?
Where are we?
Right here.
Oh, actually, that's a question that we have saved just for Kevin and Matt, so we're going to toss it back on over to them.
Well, here's a question from Jay Williams, Kevin. He asks, who came up with the name polar vortex? Years ago when it got cold, and then why call it a polar vortex?
Well, the polar vortex is something that has existed the meteorology world in the meteorology world for a long time, and it's something that actually exists. It isn't just a trendy term invented by the media for last year's cold blast. So what is it, and what can we expect? This is another question we asked our local National Weather Service meteorologist Mike Ryan.
With the polar vortex, I think the thing to encourage and share with people, that's a term that's been around forever and ever. It's basically what it is it's an upper level orb, if you will, that spins near the polar regions, and typically during the colder season, and depending on the phases of the teleconnection patterns, pieces of that polar vortex can come down into Great Lakes in the Midwest. We saw that happen in January on a couple of occasions last year. Could that impact us again if we're set up the proper way? It could. That's a possibility. But I think the most important thing is trying to educate people about what the polar vortex is. It's not something new.
I think he did a great job explaining that.
Yeah.
It's something that's always around, the polar vortex.
It is. It sounds spooky, though.
Doesn't it? We talked about this all last winter, folks. Kevin, I'd say, Kevin, how about this polar vortex? And he'd say it's one of those things that does exist. But
it does.
It was at that point, and part of it is the media as well, is blowing this up because it does make for a very hot topic.
Right.
Despite the fact that it's cold.
Anytime we get very, very cold, you say, oh, it's the polar vortex, is coming in and so on. And one thing I want to revisit a little bit that Mike was talking about, and I think this is important to keep in mind. When you have a whole lot, you can have a whole lot of snow, but still have below normal precipitation. Now, when we put down precipitation amounts, what we do is we put down the liquid equivalent. So basically, and this varies a little bit, but basically what we're talking about is, for example, it's a 10-to-1 ratio. A 10-inch snowfall, if you melt it down, will amount to about an inch of snow. So if you get 20 inches of snow, that's only 2 inches of liquid. And so consequently, it really is possible to have a snowier than average winter, more snowfall than you would expect. But yet, when you actually put it down in the record books, when you write it down, then it actually turns out that the precipitation is a little below normal. So it's just one of those little quirks that we use when we actually total up the overall precipitation.
Yeah, and kind of looking back on last winter, it was a record snowfall, obviously record winter. The last time I think we saw winter that bad was 1979. Was that about?
Yeah, it was
probably
cold.
And that's kind of one of the things that folks have been looking at is with one of the ways you and I have always discussed, and Kevin talks about how he forecasts, he takes a look at some of the folklore, and he'll show that in his piece coming up tomorrow night. So this question kind of goes along those lines.
Okay.
This is from Jamie Johnson. And Jamie, you wanted to know, how much truth do you believe persimmon seeds hold when forecasting winter weather?
Okay. Great question, because every year I get people say, oh, the persimmon seeds are showing knives or spoons or forks and so on. And the lore is that if you see a knife, it's going to be sharply cold. If you see a spoon, you're going to have to shovel a lot of snow and so on. My experience has been that persimmon seeds are not necessarily good indicators of what the winter is going to be. And the same thing goes with woolly worms. A lot of people believe in woolly worms. If they're very, very dark, you can expect a very cold winter or a very harsh winter. But I think you did a package with the fellow out at Rose-Hulman.
No, that was Joseph.
Oh,
we look the same.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, you guys look the same. Anyway, the woolly worms, there are different varieties. There are different sorts of woolly worms, and their colorings will have to do with actually what species they are, and they don't really have an indication. Humans like to make an association with something they see and then something they experience. And one thing I will touch on here is that we a lot of times talk about, well, why does it always snow north of I-70 and it rains south of I-70?
We've talked about that often.
Yeah.
And what is the reason, or at least what could folks, if they were curious about why there's a split, a divide on I-70?
There seems to be. I-70 has nothing to do with it. It's more of a latitude thing. And I-70 just happens to go through, we're at about the 39th parallel, just slightly above that. And so weather systems may come along and dump some snow, thanks to the lakes up north. And then the farther south you get, then sometimes that turns to rain unless the storm is coming up out of the south. And then you get more snow down in the south.
Well, we've talked about this often, folks. If you've wondered, kind of the structure geologically of the Midwest allows storms to travel faster. If you had sort of a mountainous range, like say the Rockies, what kind of effect does that have on winter weather?
Yeah. There was an old saying, and there's an old saying that there's nothing between us and the North Pole except some barbed wire, and so we get that cold. We get that cold coming in, and the same thing for the South. We don't have a mountain range, really, between us and the Gulf of Mexico. So we can get a lot of moisture, and consequently, we suck in moisture to make snow or rain during the summertime. So we're right in the right geographical location to have just wild swings as far as weather.
And for the most part, that means that I-70 coincidentally is kind of that divide line. It also helps us humans, like you were saying, to associate different patterns with weather. We'd like to see, it would be nice, but if you just kind of looked at it, perhaps it's actually 10 or 15 yards above I-70 that's where it actually snows and below.
Exactly, and it used to be Highway 40. Before they built Highway 70, it used to be Highway 40. Well, if it snows north of 40 and rains south of 40, but it really is just a psychological marker for many of us.
Well, I'll tell you what, why don't we send it over to Lindsay and Joseph right now to see what they're checking on for question-wise, and also what our next piece will be that they're giving up.
Yeah, we have a lot of updated questions. Everyone's been sending them in on Facebook and through email or reported, so thank you so much for doing that once again, and we'll try to get to everybody's. But first, let's start off with Skylar Edwards. He is asking, is it going to be cold? And yeah, it's likely that those temperatures are going to be pretty cold as we head through the winter, because our averages, they drop down, and we typically have a cold winter. But we could go back to last winter where We had some
it was
really frigid
very
days.
cold. In
Yeah.
fact, we hit a temperature below zero 14 different times. And it's hard to believe that we even got as cold. Now, this is not the wind chill. This was the actual air temperature. Last February 11th, it was 16 degrees below zero. Now, that was an extreme. Last year, it was just the extreme as far as cold goes. Typically, whenever we're forecasting a winter weather season, you don't forecast extremes because there's a good chance that's not going to happen.
Right.
You don't forecast record breakers because that's just not average. It's not common. So looking ahead at this winter, yes, I do expect it to still be below average temperature-wise, but 14 days below zero. That was a bit much.
And like you mentioned, this is actual air temperature. This is not even factoring in that wind chill, which will make it even, maybe 30 degrees below zero. So yeah, we factor in that wind chill, it is just nasty out there sometimes. So we should probably go into maybe preparedness week, what's good, especially if you're heading out in your car, maybe for your into your house. What's a good way to stay prepared? We had Matt's piece the other day, and you could sometimes get stuck out there if your vehicle just crashes down. You need to be prepared for this cold weather. So in vehicles, you want to make sure you keep some blankets, some clothing, a flashlight, a shovel, and make sure you do have some extra water and food. It's always nice to just have some extra supplies around your car when the winter season comes around, and even in your house too, because as we saw in Buffalo, that extreme amount of snow, sometimes you get stuck at your house. You need to be prepared for that too in the winter months.
Get 46 inches of snow. I saw a picture of one person holding a measure up in Buffalo, New York from yesterday. 46 inches of snow in that one spot. Lake effect snow is something I am glad that we really don't have to deal with here in the Wabash Valley.
That's right, but we still get a lot.
We still get a lot. We still get a lot of snow. But what else do we get? Severe weather?
Yeah.
Perhaps. That's a question sent in from Kevin Whitaker. Will there be a severe thunderstorm this winter? And again, we have to talk about last winter when we just celebrated it. You just talked about this a couple days ago.
Yeah, we had the tornadoes in Washington, the November 17th reunion.
Right.
And as we look at some of the data, it typically happens in those changing seasons, February, November, but we still can see some severe weather as we get into this time of the year. The fluctuation in temperatures that we typically see at this time of the year, where we go from 60s to 20s, that could really cause some concern with those storms developing.
And as Kevin often says, if we see a quick temperature change like that, it is often not a smooth transition.
That is
We had flooding last December. We even had some tornadoes reported in central Indiana, as well as damage reports last February 20th. And that was when we were seeing a typical winter season. So there's also always the possibility that we could see some of those severe weather events within this.
Yeah, when we were in that graphic, a lot of those sub-zero days were actually in February. So we can still see that severe weather, and of course we always will keep you updated here with News 10 and Storm Team 10 if we do see that. But a question that we have sent in just recently was also from Julie Barrows, I believe is her name.
Right, and she wants to know, well, this is what she wants. This is what she's requesting. One big winter snow, one big blizzard. But there's a difference between a winter storm and a blizzard. And Kevin and I were talking about this just before this webcast started. So I'm going to toss it back over to Kevin, and he's going to give us a little description about what a winter storm is and what kind of adds into it. What are those ingredients that make a winter storm at storm limits or at blizzard limits? What do you think, Kev?
All right, Lindsay, what I believe as far as the definition goes, a winter storm would consist of a snowfall amount of anywhere from 4 to 6 inches of snow, below freezing temperatures, and a very good strong wind, which would also create wind chill. A winter storm warning is not a blizzard, but it should be taken very, very seriously, because a winter storm is one that's going to put maybe half a foot of snow on the ground, and it's also going to blow around, and visibility could be low, and so on. A blizzard now will dump more snow than that on the ground. It probably will bring sub-zero wind chill factors, and the temperature will most likely be in the single digits. The one thing I will point out is, as Joseph kind of alluded, a lot of times before a winter storm, we have this little uptake in temperatures, which feeds moisture into the atmosphere that makes enough moisture for us to make snow. The cold air comes in, it makes snow and really dumps on us. And this may be a time now for me to address another question that I had, and it has to do the difference between an Alberta clipper and
that's right here.
Oh yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
An Alberta clipper and a Rocky Mountain low. An Alberta clipper comes from Canada, and it comes from the north and from the west, from the province of Alberta in Canada. It comes down, it moves quite quickly, and can put a few inches of snow on the ground and get really, really cold after that. Actually, that's sort of what we have been dealing with now. A Rocky Mountain low is a low that develops down in the four corners of the United States, down in the southwest part of the United States. The center of the storm will travel up, and actually the center of the storm travels south of the News 10 viewing area, and the center of low pressure then circulates counterclockwise around, scoops up moisture out of the Gulf of Mexico, and dumps an awful lot of snow on top of us. My grandmother always said, and this, you can take this to the bank, if the snow appears to be falling from the east, you can expect a heavy snowfall. And that would be an indication of a Rocky Mountain low. So,
well, taking some other comments from our Facebook we got here, I've been kind of looking as they come by for some of the questions. Here's one that kind of ties in with the blizzard. It's from Kathy Lowry McQuilkin, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Are we going to have a blizzard this winter? I don't want you to give away too much from tomorrow night, but
I haven't really. Lindsay and I have worked on our projects separately. I've kind of looked at hers, and I think she's kind of looked at me. I do not see a blizzard this year. I see a few snowstorms and at least one significant snowstorm. And I can tell you this, I'm looking at January for that to happen. Okay.
Like last year we saw the heavy amount of snowfall they were just showing you. You think January again will be the time to see that heavier band of snow? So
Latter part of January. That's what I'm saying.
All right, well, we'll send it back over to Lindsay and Joseph to see what they're checking on right now. I know they've got some wind chill questions and things like that that they've been looking into.
That's right, Matt. Jim Stroh-Snyder brought up the wind chill question. He asked, with the cold weather fast approaching, which pretty much already here,
right,
he wanted us to explain the wind chill. He said if it feels like 10, then why doesn't the thermometer show 10? If it feels like it to us, then why not the thermometer?
Right, and that is a good question that we get often. I put together this explainer just about last winter to help everyone better understand what the wind chill is. Check it out.
The concept of a wind chill factor was actually developed by a Boy Scout who realized that Antarctic explorers would get frostbite more quickly on a windy day than on a calm day. As the human body gives off heat or loses heat, your skin cools. Now here's where it becomes tricky. The wind will act on your skin as if it is even colder. So how exactly does that work? Well, let's say that it's 10 degrees outside. It's a breezy day with sustained wind speeds blowing around 20 miles per hour. That creates a wind chill of 9 degrees below zero. Your exposed skin is going to react if it is actually 9 degrees below zero. That's a big difference. Frostbite can occur even quicker than what it would be if it were just 10 degrees without wind. It's not what it feels like outside, but it's a combination of the temperature and the wind. We give you the wind chill factor so you can be prepared to dress appropriately in the wind and in the cold. So when you do head out the doors, you're going to want to grab your gloves as well as a hat to help protect that exposed skin. In Terre Haute with photojournalist Gary Bryan, I'm Joseph Dames.
And all right, to make that more clear, it's the measure of heat loss from a human body. So a thermometer, it doesn't exert heat like a human body does. So It will just show the actual air temperature. You factored the wind chill because we exert
Feel
heat.
that.
Yeah.
Right, and that was actually another question that we received from about wind chill from Tom Houston. He asked, does the wind chill affect inanimate objects, or is that something, or things that don't produce heat? And that's exactly what you just explained. We have to be able to feel the wind on our skin. If we're wearing coats, we don't feel the wind per se. So it is exposed skin to those cooler temperatures, and that just makes it feeling uncomfortable outside.
And that's right. And to get into frostbite, hypothermia, hypothermia real quick, it only takes a short amount of time to get that. So make sure that when you are heading out, it could be under 15 minutes that you could be exposed to all that. So heading out, grab gloves, all of that to make sure that you are staying covered.
Right, but the history of wind chill, you talked a little bit about it being related to Boy Scouts.
Yeah.
Kevin actually has a great story. He'll tell us exactly why the wind chill came about and how it impacts us today. Kevin?
Yeah, there was an Eagle Scout named Paul Seipel who went on Antarctic explorations with Admiral Byrd. He went on several, and here's what he noticed. He noticed that the people he worked with, you know, they would go outside, and of course it's cold in Antarctica anyway, but he noticed that his coworkers would get frostbite more quickly when the wind is blowing as opposed to when it was calm. And so the whole idea behind this is that we have this little thin layer. Our bodies exert heat, and it keeps us warm. And as long as our body exerts heat, we can stay at least, you know, relatively warm. But with the wind chill and exposed skin, what happens is the heat that radiates from our skin, our body, actually is blown away. And so consequently, if it's 15 degrees outside, but the wind chill is, for example, 8, you will get frostbite as quickly as if it were 8 degrees.
It's very fascinating. I can remember playing sports in the wintertime, and we would be out playing, we'd have our gloves on, and you would come in, and as soon as the warm air hit your hands, you almost felt a burning sensation. I remember some folks would try to warm their hands up under the faucets, and you could almost, you were only out there for a half hour, and you were pretty well covered, but you could feel it in your hands, and it was just...
Actually, you're supposed to wash your hands with cold water.
And that was the thing that they would tell the freshmen. They would say, put your hands under hot water, and it was just a disaster.
No, don't do that. A couple of things I want to get to before I toss it back over. We're going to talk about our winter app. I want to thank Dorset Automotive for sponsoring the program today. I can tell you a story. Somebody I talked with yesterday said that they have a friend who works at an automobile dealership. They have sold more SUVs this year than they have in the past several years, mainly because of the fact that they think that this winter may be brutal. I don't think it's going to be as bad as last year. And Rogers Fire and Restoration, winter can be very tough on roofs. You know, ice gets under the shingles and then causes leaks.
Well,
and
even if you have a snowfall just sitting on top, I mean, anywhere from 2 to 4 inches of snow can become a very heavy weight on top of that roof.
Yeah, sure can. Is this weather being caused by weather modification? In my opinion, not. People see these trails in the sky, they call them chemtrails and so on. I believe the Earth is too big, that weather is too big of a system for a global modification. There have been some experiences of modification of weather in Russia, in Moscow. If there's going to be a ceremony outside, they will fly planes downwind from Moscow and have it rain there so that they can continue to have their ceremonies outside because it rains out all of the rain. Another thing is that up when the steel mills were in Gary, Indiana, they used to notice that downwind from the steel mills, which put out steam and things like that, they noticed a 20% increase in snowfall because of the steam and everything coming out. The steam would condense into snow.
So you're saying that the modification would be kind of negligible, or at least caused by these smaller events. It's a chemical event.
Not big.
Okay.
It's not a worldwide thing. Is this winter going to be as bad as last year? No. Some people say the Farmer's Almanac is always accurate. Should I believe that? No, although I do use the almanac to help me with my forecast with some secret things that I use. How many snowfalls will we have this season? All I can say is several. And why is it so cold? I thought the Earth was going through global warming.
Oh, don't get him started on that.
Yeah. Some will say that the reason we're having all this cold weather is because of global warming. Well, I'm not so sure.
Did you just nod towards me?
Huh?
I think you just nodded towards me, so I would have said it.
I might have. Okay, so now let's check over here. We're going to amble over here toward Lindsay and Joseph, but you guys can wrap it up, and I think we've covered a lot of good information today.
We sure did, Kevin, and we had a lot of other questions that you folks sent in, and we'd just like to thank you once again. But if we didn't get to your question, that's because most of them will be answered tonight in the winter weather forecast with Lindsay, or on Thursday with Kevin's winter weather forecast.
Right, so those answers will be coming up. We just don't want to give all of that forecast information away just yet. But we do want to talk about, if you like mobile apps, the Storm Team has got something cool for you.
We sure do. It's the new Storm Team 10 app. The new app gives you fast, accurate, and of course, reliable weather at your fingertips. It includes personal alert notifications so you know when significant weather is on the way, which is great.
And that's right. It will pick up on your location and give you real-time weather forecast, interactive radar, and current conditions for all locations within the United States. And just like Storm Team 10, right here on News 10, the app utilizes the most advanced radar maps, weather technology, and digital technology available. It's all designed to help keep you and your family safe no matter where you are.
It's available now for iPhone and Apple Store and for Android devices as well, and we all have it. It's great.
Yes, we do. It's fantastic, and it's free.
Yeah.
Unless that wasn't already mentioned. I don't.
It was
It looks like we've covered all the questions you've asked so far. If you have more, obviously, you can always send them to us.
That's right. And like Joseph said, we're going to be answering a lot of those forecast questions. How much snow are we going to get? Is it going to be like last year? That will all be addressed tonight in either my forecast or tomorrow night with Kevin's. And speaking of Kevin's winter forecast, any hints this year, Kev?
I can tell you it's not going to be as bad as last year. I'm expecting actually several snowfalls, and I expect at least one big winter storm, and we will have at least a few below 0 days.
Right. The weird thing is
About
Kevin and
typical,
I,
about average.
right, we used completely different forecast methods, but somehow when we were comparing notes, they came up pretty similar.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
Interesting. Well, we'll have to see. You have to wait tonight. Again, my forecast will air first on News 10 at 6 and the evening cast as well, and then Kevin's coming up tomorrow.
Tomorrow night.
All right, well, thank you all again for joining us today and on this web chat. We really enjoyed that. We'll see you again tonight, beginning with News 10 first at 5. Have a great afternoon.
The Storm Team 10 Winter Weather Webcast is sponsored by Dorset Automotive and Rogers Fire and Water Restoration.